Welcome back. In the last video, we took this engine and transmission out of this 1970 911T, and today we're going to start tearing it down. I'm going to take the exhaust off, shrouds off, the metal shrouds on the sides, heat tubes, all that. Then I'm actually going to adjust the valves because we're going to do a leak down test just to confirm the health of the engine, and then continue to tear it down. So I think we're going to time lapse removing a lot of this stuff, and then we'll adjust the valves. Okay, now I got the engine torn down a bit, enough to where we can get to the valve covers easily and see everything at once. Got the shroud on here. So you might be wondering, why are we going to adjust the valve before we do the leak down test? Well, if you think about it, if the valves are adjusted way too tight and they're not closing all the way, obviously that's going to affect the leak down results when we pump compressed air into the cylinder. So we're going to adjust the valves real quick, which is pretty easy. But first I'm going to take off all of the valve covers, both the upper and lower. And then we'll get started adjusting the valves. I just wanted to give you a peek inside this engine. It is very clean. You can see on the cam lobes, there's really no visible wear, no buildup of carbon or anything like that. It's the same down here on the exhaust side. Everything looks really nice and clean. So that's good. So even though this engine had some questionable work done to it, seems like overall it was well taken care of. Same story over here. Good stuff. One funny thing is, well, two funny things. They use these, I don't know, whatever kind of silicone gaskets those are that leak terribly. But on this, someone wrote on here, like, carved in an R. It was on the right side of the engine, but I don't know. They were probably learning their alphabet or something. I'm not sure. But that's the kind of people that were working on this thing in the past. We'll get it right and make it better than ever. Okay, now that we've got the valve covers off, we're ready to adjust the valves. But there's a couple things to note here before we start. So you're going to need a feeler gauge. And most modern feeler gauges, have a turn in them like this. But this one only goes down to 0.008 or 8 thousandths of an inch. And we need to go down to 0.004, 4 thousandths of an inch. So I have this gauge here. This is an older one that has just straight ones. But from working on Porsches in the past, I cut the end off, or it broke off, I can't remember. But I bent this one so I can fit it in there nice and perfectly. So that's what I'm going to use. And then you're also going to need 13 millimeter wrench and a screwdriver. This is how you adjust the valves. Loosen the lock nut and then adjust it with a screwdriver. Another thing to note is you never want to turn the engine counterclockwise. You only want to go clockwise. Turn it, this way. The engine, this is the way it rotates under power, and if you go backwards, it can mess up the timing chains. Another thing I did is marked the cylinders not by their number, but by the firing order. So 1 is 1. Cylinder 1 is the first one, and then 2, I think, is this back here, and so on. So this is the firing order on here. So that's the order that I'm going to adjust the valves, and I'll show you how we're going to do that. There's actually timing marks on the crank pulley every 120 degrees, so that you can do the next cylinder in the firing order. But first, we're going to have to get it to top dead center on number 1. Intake. This crank pulley is so messed up. Let's see. Okay, so now we're at top dead center. So basically what I was doing was rotating this and watching the number one cylinder. And I watched the intake valve open and then close. And now we're coming to the top dead center mark on here. So that would definitely confirm that number one is the top dead center. There's supposed to be a mark on the distributor, which there is not. Well, there is, but it's nowhere near what we're doing. I don't know if that's the right distributor because there's other things weird about it. But anyways, we know that number one is the top dead center. I can also physically see the camshaft in here and that we're on the back side of the lobe. So we know we're good there. So I'm going to take my feeler gauge, slide in here. I'm going to get closer with this. But basically going to try to get this back in here behind the... Okay. Pull this back. Okay, yeah, see it just fits in there. It's kind of snug. It slides in there nice and easy. That's like a little bit tight, some friction there. So that's perfect. So that's what you want. So this valve's good. And I'll find one that's bad. Once I find one that needs adjusted, I'll show you how to do that. So I'll do the exhaust on this cylinder, then we'll move to the next cylinder. The intake and exhaust were both within spec for cylinder one, so now we're going to go to cylinder 6, which is the second in the firing order. So to do that, you can see there's 3 markings on here. This one is the TDC mark, and then there's 2 others that are at 120 degrees each. So basically all we need to do is go to the next 120 degree mark. Right there. And now we know that cylinder 6 is the top dead center. And then after 6, we'll turn this another 120 degrees to the next marker, and then we'll know that the cylinder is at 2 is a top dead center. We can check and adjust those valves. So we'll do cylinder 6 next here. Okay, so here we are on cylinder 6, and you can see this is way too tight. I was able to get the gauge in there, but it doesn't move freely. Even if I pull this back, it's too tight. So we're going to loosen that up. Just going to loosen the lock nut here. All right, so we can just kind of leave that on there. So now I can loosen this a little. Get my feeler gauge back in there. Whoop, I'll take this wrench off. Sometimes it stays on, sometimes it doesn't. All right, so now I can get my feeler gauge in there. Okay, so it moves nice and freely. So I'm just going to turn this until it's a little snug. Oh, we got to let's do the lock nut a little more. There we go. That was bottoming out. That's too tight. So right about there. It's a little snug, but I can still move it up and down. So hold that there. Hold the screw in place. Tighten the lock nut down. There we go. So now, yep, that's perfect. Still a little snug. Great. So that one's adjusted. Just got to do that to the rest of them, or at least make sure they're in spec, and then we'll be done. All right, so we got the valves adjusted. And there's a couple things I remember to mention while I was doing this. There is a special tool that makes this a lot easier than using some old bent one like I do. I don't do this that often, so I don't really need the special tool. This does get the job done. But if you have a Porsche and you just want it to be easier, then get the special tool. Also, you don't have to take the engine out to do this, obviously. You do it in the car. It's a little harder because you have to do these from above and these from below because there's a shroud here and everything. So there's a lot of going up and under and turning the engine and up and under and all that. But yeah, it's a pretty simple process. And now that we got all that done, we know all the valves are set properly. I only had to adjust like 2 of them. They were just a little tight. But now that we have them all set properly, we can do a leak down test. So for the leak down test, we're going to do it in the same order because we're going to do each cylinder at their top dead center. So same thing with those marks on there. I have it right now on top dead center for cylinder 1. So we'll start in cylinder 1, get the leak down readings, turn to 120 degrees, go to 6 because that's next in the firing order. You know, get the reading, 120 degrees, then over here to 2, and so on and so forth. So I'll show you how to do that. So let's get to that. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is take this spark plug out of cylinder 1 because it's the first cylinder we're going to test. And we're not going to take all the spark plugs out, just one at a time, because if you take them all out and then you ram air into the cylinder, it's just going to turn the engine over. So you got to keep all the other ones in there so that the compression holds the engine back for the test. I don't have the rubber thing in here. Okay, get the spark plug out of here. Throw it in the hose here. Again, this is something you could do in the car, but a lot easier when the engine's out. And some people say, oh, you got to do it when the engine's hot, which, sure, that would probably give you better results, but you know, that's pretty hard to do when everything's hot. And again, we're not looking for perfection. We're just making sure this engine has no catastrophic failures. And if there is something wrong, this is still going to tell us what's wrong, and we'll be able to tell that by where the air is coming out of. I'll show you how that works in a second. So that's good on there. Get this here, plug this in. That's good there. I get my air line. Put this up here. Kind of hang on there maybe. Perfect. Look at that. Made for it. Okay, so we got cylinder 1 hooked up to the leak down tester. And what I'm going to do when I turn the air on is set this at 90. You could do 100, then it's really easy to do the math. You know, oh, okay, so this is at 100 and this one's at 90, you have 10% leak down. But we're going to do 90 just because this gauge maxes out at 100, so I'm not really sure how accurate that is. And there's a little chart in the box to tell you, if you set this to 90, what these readings are in the math, and, you know, or I calculate it myself, I'm not that dumb. So let's turn the air on here. All right, so I'm going to turn this up. It's holding pressure, that's good. So we go all the way up to 90. So we're dead on 90, and this is at 89. So that's what is that? 1% of leakage. So that's good. I'll write that down in a second here. But that's an easy pass. So I'm going to write that down. So I just got my notepad here. So that was cylinder 1. We can write down, so this is input out of 90. Put it at 89, which according to the chart is 1%. Great. So now we'll move on to the next cylinder, which I believe is 6. Oh, no. Yeah, 6 is the next one. So we'll move everything to that one. Rinse and repeat. Take this out. Like I said, I'm putting the spark plug back in each time so that this compressed air going in there doesn't just rotate the engine. Where's my spark plug? Oh, here it is. Oh, I should get my little hose. That's why there's no way to go. I'll get this stabbed in there. Oh, there you go. Got lucky. That spark plug's in. So now we got to go over to cylinder 6, which is the next in the firing order. Let's rotate this around. Hang this right here. What did I do there? Oh, there we go. Okay. We also have to get this cylinder top dead center. So I'm going to go to the next mark, which is 100 degrees or 120 degrees over. There we go. Okay. Let's take out this spark plug back here. I am going to get my little hose. So, pop this out. And spark plug out. Thread this in. Nice and tight. Pop it in here. All right, so now we're going to crank the pressure up here. All right, to 90. This one's even better. We got, I guess that last one was 88. So this is because under dashes of 2. So this one's 89 out of 90. So that's another good one. So write that down. Adjust the other one there too. So this last one was 88, which is 2%. This was 89, which is 1%. So next we're going to go to the other side of the engine. Do it all over again. So put the spark plug back in here. Snug that down. Spin this around again. Middle one here. Cylinder 2. Third in firing order. So we're going to turn the crank another 120 degrees to the next mark. Now cylinder 2 is the top dead center. So again, pop the spark plug out. Hose in. All right, I'll put this up here. Okay, so we're gonna crank this up here. So again, we're about 89, 88 out of 90. Perfect. So you might be wondering what we're doing here really with the leak down test. So basically, it's just putting compressed air into the cylinder and seeing if it leaks out. And if it leaks out, you can see where it's leaking out of. So say you put air in there and it's coming out of the intake, which you can feel, you can put your hand up here and feel that air coming out. Then you know, okay, something's wrong with the intake valve. Same with, okay, it's coming out the exhaust. Something's wrong with the exhaust valve. Or it's leaking real bad past the rings and out into the crankcase. Then you got bad rings. So that's what the leak down test tells you. Because if you can do a compression test, and if you have good compression, then great. Then that means everything's good. But if you have low compression, you're not going to know why. It could be a bad valve, and you say, oh, bad compression at the motor shop, but it's just a valve. You know what I mean? So that's the advantage of a leak down test is a lot more precise and able to show you exactly what's wrong if something's wrong. So we got cylinder 2 done, which is third in firing order. So next we're going to go to cylinder 4, which is fourth in firing order. Oh, wrong way. Crank this up. Yeah, now it's good now. Got right on to 90. This one is a little lower. Mine's still on the, yep. So this one's at 87. Still not cause for concern though. What number are we on? 4. 87. 3%. Now we're moving to cylinder 3, which is fifth in the firing order. Okay, here we go. Let's see this cylinder here. Pretty good. Get on to 90 there. We're at 89. Perfect again. So for this one, I'm going to get a close-up of everything. So moved on to the next cylinder, which is the last cylinder, cylinder number 5, which is 6th in the firing order. First thing we're going to do is turn the crank another 120 degrees to the next timing mark. Right there. Okay, next we're going to remove the spark plug. Handy dandy hose. Get that out. Put in the test hose. Screw this in. All right. Now we'll attach our hose to the tester. All right, now we're going to start applying pressure. Going up nicely. Stop it right at 90. Okay, this one's a couple down, so we're at 85 out of 90, so we'll write that down. Okay, so here's an example of where the leak down tester really comes in handy. So we got 90 psi in, it's only holding 85 psi. So that's like a 5-6% loss. So we can feel not coming out of the exhaust, not coming out of that cylinder's intake, but I can actually hear it coming out of the vent breather here. So that's leaking past the rings. Now, this is not catastrophic. And to be honest, this might actually go away if we drive it for a while. Not go away, but it would get better. You know, this cylinder could be not lubed appropriately just from sitting, or who knows what. It could also have a score in the cylinder wall or something like that. We can actually check that out with a borescope, which we might do. But I just wanted to show how, you know, I can feel it coming out of the crankcase, which means it's not the valves. It is either the cylinder wall or the rings. But it's still a minimal leak. I have to turn it up to 100 here. So that's right at 100. Yeah, so we got exactly a 6% leak down. 6% loss. Not catastrophic. It's not worth tearing this whole engine apart. All the other cylinders are good. So this one cylinder is a little low, but I think it's healthy enough. This engine is crystal clear inside, so I think it's good to go. Let's take this out, and then maybe we'll put a borescope in there, see if we can see anything. I got my borescope set up here. I'm gonna take a look in here. Put this down in here. It's that cylinder that was slightly low. On the screen here, I'm gonna record this on here. You can actually easily make out the cross hatching in the walls and everything. It's hard to see up, but from what I see here, this looks pretty good. So because it looks this good, I'm not really worried about that slightly lower percentage. I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but we'll see. Well, after we adjusted the valve and did a leak down test, we've confirmed that we have a healthy Porsche engine. I was looking at what people were saying on the internet as far as what's the acceptable amount of leak down on the 911 engines. And a lot of people say anything less than 10% is good. Although, you know, since most of them are like 1 or 2, I'd really like to see all of them at 1 or 2. So maybe the 1-cylinder just isn't quite as healthy as the others. Maybe it has a little bit more wear, but it's still okay. This engine's good to go. It looks pristine inside. So I think we're good to go. To tear this thing down all the way down, replace all the gaskets, clean every single part, put it all back together, we'll have a clean looking, nice leak-free engine. Let me know if that's something you want to see on the videos, just taking this whole thing apart. It'd be a lot of time lapses, but I guess it'd be pretty satisfying to see. Not too much how-to, because it's really just take apart, clean, put back together kind of thing. So that's enough for this video. Thanks for watching, and the Porsche project continues.